And it's lights out. Welcome to the Pitwall Podcast, Russia Grand Prix edition. We are your knights in racing armor. Joining me this evening is my bro Dominick, my father Dr. David Kessler, our great friend Paola, and I'm your host Jeanmark. And let's go. For our constructor standings, Mercedes is pulling away from Red Bull. McLaren is starting to edge away from Ferrari. And we see that the battle is heating up. Dad, you think that these tracks moving forward might favor Red Bull?
They have typically favored Red Bull in the past, and so I don't see why they wouldn't continue. They don't have the longer straights. They have better cornering, and that's what Red Bull is usually better at. The McLarens and the Mercedes will have a little more challenge going forward.
Which now brings us to our driver standings. Verstappen had 5 points clear of Hamilton. Hamilton now has 2 points advantage. And going into the last 7 races, there's 2 points and 1 championship at stake. We're going to be talking about in our coming podcast who we think is going to edge it out. But it seems like, bro, that you think Verstappen has the edge?
Yeah. The reason Verstappen ended up behind Hamilton, I feel, in this race was because of his penalty. From here on out, we've seen Verstappen seem like he's had better races overall through the season. I don't really feel like that's going to change in these next couple of races.
You bring a good point. Hamilton seems to have bad starts. Verstappen usually gets off the line, with the exception of Ricciardo in Monza. Verstappen has had really good race starts. He's had good race pace. And he hasn't really made mistakes. So if he doesn't repeat Monza or Silverstone, he should be able to continue edging out. Which now brings us to perhaps the greatest way to describe this last race is 6 slippery laps. The shuffle of the order was so vast, so crazy. It was deflating to watch on TV. I showed my sister a 30-minute version of the race on F1 TV, and she was not happy. She really likes Norris, so she felt really bad. But Paola, you had Bottas. I did as well. You had Bottas on your team. Tell me your thoughts from Bottas during qualifying to the race and then the last 6 laps.
I was looking forward to having Bottas on my team. Then, as we all know, watching him go down all the way to 15th position midway through the race, I regretted everything and I thought I was going to get absolutely 0 points. So from a fantasy one standpoint, once the rain hit, I was a little bit happier, and that definitely lifted my spirits because I knew that he was going to fare better than the other drivers out there on slick tires. I think he could have done better in terms of passing and being maybe a little bit more aggressive, but overall, I think he did all right. He did the best he could.
Well, that goes now to the saga. So because of mixed conditions going into qualifying, off the back of a canceled free practice 3 because of rain, you had Hamilton who was coming into the pits and crashes into the wall. That takes so much time that they actually had to push his car forward, hit Bottas to switch from inters to the slicks, and then wheel back Hamilton to put that on. And that forced both those drivers to really have one opportunity at setting a fast lap. They couldn't get the heat into their tires. Hamilton even spun on his push lap, and that's why you saw them so far down in their qualifying. Then the team's like, well, Bottas, we know you were supposed to be qualifying on P1 in the dry, and you were going to give Hamilton the tow so he could win the race. Now we'll give you a grid penalty so that you're right in front of Verstappen and block him. Then you have Verstappen who goes right past Bottas. He doesn't even block him really at all. And then like you said, it seems like Bottas was languishing in the back. I think it's crazy that Bottas's race weekend was saved because of Mercedes' decision to put him on those inters when the rain started coming.
But also how disappointing that once again, it's not Bottas's great driving skills and grit that's getting him to the top, but other factors like team strategy, the absence of a bad pit stop or somebody DNFing, etc. Like I don't see that Bottas has ever had a similar race to Hamilton where, say, he crawls all the way from the back to the front and he has the car to do that sort of thing. Like he gets a pass, but definitely not an A+ for this race.
He gets a pass, and I'm probably not going to run Bottas on my fantasy lineup for the rest of the season because none of these tracks are favoring them. That now brings us to his teammate Hamilton. For Team 1, I decided to mega drive Hamilton. knowing that there was the weirdness, the qualifying getting canceled, well, that'd be fine. He would qualify second. Well, then he qualified fourth, not the best. Yes, I wanted Norris to win, but then Hamilton won, so then I get 52 fantasy points for Hamilton, and you multiply that by 3. Okay, that's a pretty good haul. I'm actually saving the Mega Drive for my second team, probably for either Verstappen or Hamilton when we get to Brazil. We'll talk about that when we get closer. It is sad, over 6 laps, we saw so much change and so much carnage. We get to these 6 laps? Well, let's review. We had Norris, Sainz, and Russell with their great slick switching over. This is called crossover, where you got from dries to intermediates or intermediates back to dries. And those 3 got good qualifying pace. Then you had Alonso and Ricciardo passing Hamilton at the beginning of the race. So he starts 4th, he ends up 7th. But there was a DRS train and Ricciardo blocked Hamilton until the first round of pit stops, in which Ricciardo, it's sad he had a long pit stop. It was bad for him, which then allowed Hamilton to get past him. And then Ricciardo then was blocking Verstappen. And then it seemed like that was going to ruin Verstappen's race. And then the rain hit. And then, like we said, Verstappen's able to get to P2. Hamilton's able to win the race. So, bro, how did you feel? You were telling us you were taking notes of the race. How would you describe the race?
In the past, they always say that Sochi is a uninteresting race. There wasn't too much of it until the rain hit, and then all of a sudden too much was happening, and then I couldn't take any notes at all. So you get one or the other, and unfortunately I got both.
True. A little too much was going on. Now, Dad, what was your impression of how they were capturing the race?
It was tough for me because here Verstappen was 7th, and then all of a sudden he's 2nd. It's like, how did that happen? Until I got to watch the video replay of his laps, then I found out how it happened. But during that time, I couldn't figure it out.
Hold on. I'm going to say the camera work on this race, at least for us, I felt was really bad. There were a lot of passing that was happening that they didn't actually show even before the rain. They would say, oh, hey, look, a dude passed another dude. They were focusing on something else entirely.
I could be wrong, but I think they were just following Norris's slow and painful descent down. They replayed him going off track a couple of times. And I remember on a personal note, like that's all I was paying attention to. Like, will he come back? When he pits, where will he end up? And I really lost track of all the changes that were going on until the very end, where it was like, whoa, okay, I missed a lot just because I get my mind off of him.
Last thing we'll say about the race reactions before we get into heroes and zeros. Where do you rate this in the 2021 season? Best race? Second best? Third best? Okay, bro, I saw you shaking your head. Where do you rate this in the races for the season?
So if I was to have to rate it, I mean, I'm not going to rate it against the other races because it require me to remember every race that we've had. But I would say that it was definitely more entertaining than past Sochi races. There was enough passing to keep it interesting. And I feel like that the ending is the kind of ending you should get in a race like this. But we've actually had a couple interesting races this year. It was definitely a good race, I'd say.
I think I'd watch it again. I did like the variety at the end with the rain. I think if the rain had held off until the end of the race, I would have been disappointed.
Really? You wouldn't have wanted Norris to win?
Oh, I would have loved Norris to win, but I would have rather him pitted at the right time and won that way. And showed that he had skills as far as driving in rain and his team were getting him through it and having the excitement of the rain. Variety is the spice of life sometimes.
I'm going to be bold and say this might be the best race of the season. I don't want to qualify a good race because there was something really shocking, like 2 cars crashing into each other and spinning out, or multiple DNFs. I think this had all the elements that I want to see in a good race, like seeing the different nuances in tire management and how well different cars perform under different conditions. We saw that because of the rain. We saw Lewis really having to fight for his win, and it was a historic win at that. I can't quite think of a race that matched that level of excitement and devastation.
True. It's now time for heroes and zeros. I feel like most of our decisions are based off of pre-rain and post-rain. But with that being said, Dominic, who is your hero?
I'm going to have to go with Verstappen on this one. For the large majority of the race, it felt like he was going to maybe get some points at best and then near the end of the race. It came out of nowhere, I promise. All of a sudden, Verstappen's in second place. I was like, he didn't win the race, but he went all the way from the back of the grid to second place, probably taking advantage of the rain, I'd hazard to guess. So good job on him.
Yep, that was a very smart decision where he says, I want to get on inters. A lot of the other drivers we're talking about want to do the opposite, and it ended up being beneficial for Verstappen.
There's a cool video that showed the last 6 laps with Verstappen, and you could see how he was passing people in the rain who are still on slicks.
Who is your hero?
My hero happened to be Hamilton. Even though he's not my favorite driver, I have to commend him for winning 100 races. And the way he did this time, trusting his team versus Norris, who didn't trust his team as to when to come in because of when the rain was actually coming. I have to give my hats off to Hamilton. He listened to his team, and he got his 100th win.
Wait a second. You're a Mercedes fan, but Hamilton's not your favorite driver? I'm so confused.
I'm a Red Bulls fan. I'm not a Mercedes fan.
Interesting.
What made you think he was a Mercedes fan, bro?
Because one time I had him play the game and he drove Mercedes.
That's because they have a great car.
Yeah, okay. That's what they all say.
Paola, your hero.
I think Sainz had a really great week. He got front row during qualifying, and then even though he wasn't able to maintain that lead, I think he did a great job of managing his tires, just keeping focused when the weather turned bad. Getting that podium finish in his first top 5 in Russia, I think is something that he should be really proud of.
True.
You know, I tend to agree with you, man. You would think that Leclerc would have the car to his specifications, and for Sainz to come through, I thought that was amazing. So I agree with you.
Which now brings me to my hero, Raikkonen. 2 races gone because of testing positive for COVID. You probably didn't hear anything about Raikkonen during this race, but because of the rain and him getting on his inters at the right time, he finished the race in 8th, getting some more points for Alfa Romeo. So congrats to him, even though he was probably the invisible racer this whole week. This now swings over to our zeros. Somebody who we saw a decent amount of was the Aston Martin racers, partly because they were running into each other or Stroll spinning Gasly. I don't know what was going on with that team. It seems like there was some weird things. Poor qualifying, poor race. Which now brings us to your zero, Paola.
My zero this week would be Perez. He did a great job of getting up to podium contention throughout the race and then didn't make the right call when he didn't opt in to get off the slick tires. That loss of points, that loss of positions cost Red Bull major points in the constructors' standings. So I think he really should have listened and, matched his teammates' strategy. And that way he would have at least kept Red Bull with less of a gap from Mercedes.
That's true. I hadn't thought about that. But if he had done his stop at the optimal time, you would have had Hamilton, Verstappen, Perez podium because he was in 3rd place and he would have been able to stay ahead of Sainz. And so it goes to show how those momentary decisions between the teams, the drivers, and then who tells who what to do makes a difference. Which now brings us, Dad, to Leclerc. Why is he your zero?
Because in a fantasy point of view, he costs more than Sainz, and he's being outperformed by Sainz. And so I'm just not impressed that his teammates outperforming him right now.
Bro, why is Norris your zero?
So Paola was mentioning loss of points for the race because of the poor decision. This is such an easy one. Norris had a tough decision to make, cost him from 1st to 7th. That's a change of 19 points. That's huge. I understand why he made the decision. Once again, it was a decision that just gave Hamilton that magic that he always has.
Speaking about Norris, we do need to remember in his long career that hopefully he has, this is going to be one of those moments where he's able to learn, trust the team more. But also the team needs to learn to assert themselves more. We see on Mercedes that you'll have a guy like James or even Toto Wolff, the team principal, will get on the comms and tell Hamilton or Bottas what to do. Because it seems like the engineer was talking with Lando like a peer. So you need somebody who's a level above or Seidel, the team principal, to get on and say, hey, here's the situation. You need to pit. And so my hope is that they are going to use that moving forward. That's going to only improve the team in these tense mixed conditions.
That brings me to when I saw that video, the last 6 laps by Verstappen, he had really good communication with his team. They told him what to look out for, what turns people were in. Norris was off the track, who was slower in front of them on slicks. Really gave Verstappen the heads up on how to navigate his last few laps.
Contrasting with Norris, because he's in first place, he has all the pressure. He, as some other drivers will sometimes say, is leave me to it. That's what Hamilton says. Norris says, shut up. I think he needs to change his things around and say, only tell me information that I need to know. Don't ask me questions over the radio, so that he could say, oh, you're presenting me with new information? Great. Now I can pit. Instead of asking me, how are the tires feeling? Because at the end of the day, it's raining on the other side of the track. It's a 2-minute lap. Tell me new information so I can say, oh, maybe I should pit. As we look ahead to this coming week, this is our opportunity to share with you our lineups, who we're thinking about keeping, who we're thinking about trading, and how we plan to increase our team value. We're going to start off with you, bro.
If you take a look at my team, I'm using pretty much the same lineup I had last week. However, Verstappen is looking like he might lose 0.1%, so I switched him out. Bottas is just a placeholder. I'll pick up Verstappen after he loses the 0.1 or before the race, whichever comes sooner.
Or in the case that Bottas gains a percentage, because then you get a double cap for your
help.
I
mean, that's icing on the cake if that happens, but not the reason I picked him up.
Just as a stopgap measure. Good. Dad, your lineup.
So I have two lineups here. The one I actually played, this last one, I submitted to the ORC, which had Hamilton, Bottas, Norris, Gasly, Mazepin, and Alpine. And as you probably guessed, the team didn't do so well in the ORC. Hamilton is gaining, so I'll probably keep him. The nice thing is Gasly's about to gain 0.1 million, so I'll definitely keep him until he gains. Overall, I don't trust him a whole lot anymore. After he gains me a 0.1%, I'll get rid of him. Kind of sounds sad, but that's the reality of day trading.
The tricky thing about Gasly is that anytime there's rain, his team does not do good. He even called them out on that. And so if there's going to be dry conditions, I think Gasly is worth keeping. If it's anything beyond that, sounds like Sainz is going to be the one to go with.
Oh, thank you for that information. My second team is the one that I'm doing more day trading with to get more points. Like Dominick, I might take Verstappen off the team temporarily. His sentiment is only in the 70s, so I'm not sure he's going to actually drop, and you only have 3 substitutions, so I might just keep an eye on Verstappen, and if he gets above 80 or closer to 90, then substitute him out. Pretty much go from there at this point.
So after this race, I'm looking to keep both Norris and Gasly on, and potentially take Bottas out and put Hamilton back in, as well as Verstappen, which would mean that as my constructor, I would have to put McLaren in. I think Norris and Ricciardo are both going to do well, and unless they both crash into each other, I think Hamilton and Verstappen will continue to get podium finishes. As you mentioned, I'll definitely keep an eye out for how Gasly does. And if he looks like he's doing well, then I might not take that risk and keep him on and have to choose between Hamilton or Verstappen.
Correct, which now brings me to my lineup. Team 1 is for midline stats for the season. My second one's my day trading. And I was able to get Hamilton and Bottas on both of those lineups. But I like what you're saying. Is it possible to get a Hamilton-Verstappen lineup? There are teams I've seen around the leagues that are having that lineup. But then you'd have to have a lower constructor. And so now that we're switching over to Red Bull favored tracks, I'm thinking about trying to offload, get Verstappen back on because he's cheaper than Hamilton, and pick up Red Bull again. Look, like you guys said about Gasly, if he's able to raise in value, and then make my adjustments based off of that.
It's now time for It's in the Numbers. Last week, we had a large string of numbers I'm not reading a second time, but Gianluca, I believe, was our only taker and nailed it perfectly. All of those numbers were the turns. So left turns were one of those sets and right turns were the other sets. So congratulations to you. Our numbers are 1 minute, 1 second, .392, 1 minute 39.294, then a second set, 1 minute, .595, and 1 minute 38.396. These are 2 different drivers. It came from the Russian Grand Prix, as usual. Think you know the answer and you're brave enough to put it in the comment section, go ahead and do so. Bonus points if you can tell us what those values mean. So good luck.
I'd like to share with you our ORC Elite. ORC stands for One Race Challenge. Elite means this is the best potential lineup that you could have with a team with a value of 100 million or less. You would have had Ricciardo and Sainz. We already talked about that pairing being really strong moving forward. Alonso and Raikkonen, Russell, and Mercedes. 215 points. This now comes to our one race challenge, our ORC. I'm promoting to you the Turkey Grand Prix. It's a single team entrant. This is your opportunity to not have to worry about clawing back points, how you're going to compare over the grind of a season. You just put in your lineup, see how you compare. Top 3 positions get placed on our ORC leaderboard, and if you are the best of those 3 positions, you get on our podium ceremony at the end of our Race Reaction podcast. There are 2 rules. The first thing to remember is that we take base points for the team. So if you do a mega driver, that's fine. That's good for your other leagues, but that does not take into consideration for our one race challenge. The second is ties. If you are tied on points, we then have tie break for the value of the team. So you're both third place, for example, but the one with the lower team value gets preferential treatment for the podium ceremony. This now brings us over to one race challenge for the Russia Grand Prix. We want to give a shout out to our top scorer for this week, Bridger. Good job. You had a mega driver on Hamilton. While that isn't enough for you to be able to get on our podium when you take away his mega driver points, we still want to give you the shout out. Good job. My team number 1, I also did a mega driver. Hamilton came through. Now that we go to our podium, we take screenshots, and Dad actually writes these down by hand. We take a record of the performance of our one race challenge at the close of the race when the points are finalized. We're going to hear the Canadian National Anthem with Kyle. Congratulations. You were able to get Mercedes on your team. Now, some of you might be saying, wow, 110.7 million. I can't afford that. Well, that's why we share with you the ORC Elite, to show you that it is possible to outperform these teams that do really good with their day trading. We have another team that has a similar lineup, the difference being who got turbo. There was a huge discussion over the last few races. Do we turbo Gasly? Do we turbo Norris? I'm thinking more and more that question shouldn't be between turboing Gasly and Norris, but do you turbo Norris or Sainz? Do you turbo Norris or Ricciardo? Gasly has not been as consistent as he should be, but good on you for getting second place. Third place, a lot of people did the exact same lineup as me. You might have watched my 3 statistical secrets, good on you, but we have a fair amount of people who ended up tying because they ran the same lineup as me. We want to give a shout out to those people who are doing the lowest value.
Wait, do we have a Fast Stacks award then?
Yes, we will.
Yes.
We will have Fast Stacks. Our 2 lowest values were at 107.5 million. Raul, congratulations. And our second was Rafal. Congratulations, you both got the 107.5. And this is why we do the tiebreaker with lowest team value, to give you the incentive that even if you don't have the greatest value team, you get the preferential treatment when it comes to tiebreakers. But that does mean, though, we give a Fat Stacks award to the most valued team when there is a tie. So, Prachi, we give you the Fat Stacks award of 109.2 million.
I do have to mention, Jeanmark, that I am proud of you for being tied for third place. Even though you didn't get the Fat Stacks or the lowest, I'm proud of you anyways.
Oh, thank you, Dad. Our Meme Team Award.
So a quick word for you guys. We've noticed that after the race, sometimes some of the names change, and that's okay. We actually appreciate that because sometimes the meme names are better because of the knowledge that comes after the race. We would like it very much, please, if you would not switch your teams. That would be great for us. We already keep track of how people scored at the end of the race, as we said with the screenshots. You know, we're trying to keep it one way here, so change your name is okay. Please don't change your team. Thank you.
Yeah, these are designed to be one race challenges. We enjoy that you are changing your team name for the Meme Team Award. And that brings us to Mission a Bottas. Thank you for that laugh, because it just feels like they're aborting Bottas all the time. We just hope better for Bottas, especially when he goes over to Alfa Romeo, where he gets to be the #1 driver on his team. That'll be exciting. Now it's time to look at our ORC leaderboard. Round 15 in Russia. You can see that we had 2, 4, 6, 7 tied for third place. And on this spreadsheet, under the tab ORC or ORC, you find the link in the description below. You highlight in green whenever there is a Fast Stacks awarded. Now, if you do see something that is green with white lettering, that is when you beat the ORC Elite, which often can be quite difficult. Going over to the rightmost, we can see that the average points to get a bronze or a third place, you need a team value of about 103.3 million, and you're scoring roughly 197 points. So this can help you realize if you get around 200 200 points, you're probably going to end up on the podium. The average score for a silver is 204 points, but the value of the team goes up by an average of 2.2 million. And then the big jump to 217 points for the gold, but the team is even more expensive than silvers. Now over to our left, we want to just share with you guys the amazing ORC Leaderboard to keep track of how you guys are doing every race of the season. Thank you to the YouTube comments. Keskor was here. He said, I don't want to be lower. I want to be equal. And so I was able to go into my formulas. And now if you are tied, your position will be the same. So that means I have now cracked the top 10 with my second podium appearance. I am tied 9th with all those that have a gold and a bronze. Dad, you are still sitting at second with 73 points, and it is your hope to hopefully climb that leaderboard.
Yeah, I missed a golden opportunity this week because Gia also had trouble this week getting into the first through third placing.
What is something that you would have had to change on your team, do you think, to have gotten on the podium?
Unfortunately, because I was actually day trading, I was not ready and set up for this race.
So wait, I'm confused. So you're saying because you were day trading, you didn't have the subs to get a better team? Is that what you're saying?
Right. So I ended up putting my third team onto the ORC Elite. I didn't put my main team on because I would have had to take a 10-point deficit to put the team I wanted on. I didn't have signs on it, so it wouldn't have been worth the 10 points that I would have lost.
I see. Juso or Huso, however you pronounce it, please let us know in the comments. You are now up to the 5th place on the leaderboard with your podium appearance. There's a lot of people who got on the podium for the very first time, so shout out to you. And we have 7 races left, and it is going to be great. If you make it in the top 3 positions, whether you tie or not, your name gets immortalized right here on our ORC leaderboard.
I will be rooting for Gia to pass 100 points. I think that'd be a great milestone.
He just has to get on the podium one more time, and he'll become a Centurion.
I would like to get up there with him, so I'd have to win a couple more.
Yeah, you'd probably have to get on the podium twice, right? Because 25 points is for gold, and you're at 73. If you get 2 bronze, you'll crack 100.
Sounds like a plan to me.
Yeah, well, we're waiting. Why are you taking so long?
Suspense. Sometimes people like the build-up.
There we have it. Thank you so much for joining us in this amazing podcast. There has been some Discord server issues, but we've plowed through. We've been your knights in racing armor. And until next time, we'll see you on the pit wall.